us this evening to learn more about wild birds. I hope you enjoy the presentation. Please put your comments in the chat throughout. I do a pretty good job of reading along as I can, and it's always better to answer a question on the topic as we're talking about it than trying to wait to the end. So I will do my best to incorporate as we go along. So as Kendall mentioned, we are the only rehabilitation hospital in Eastern Ontario, and we began with this wonderful lady named Kathy Nehai in 1981 with this hummingbird pictured here, which she named Pip. It was found on a neighbor's driveway, and Kathy, a teacher and a caring person for people and animals, this neighbor brought it over to Kathy, and she was able to care for it all winter long and release it in the spring, which I could tell you is no easy feat. And that's all it took to start the Wild Bird Care Center, because that neighbor told the next neighbor, who told her mother and daughter, sister-in-law's uncle, and everyone was bringing birds to Kathy's house. So our official statement, because birds are protected by the Migratory Bird Act, thankfully, we are a registered charitable organization dedicated to the care, treatment, and rehabilitation of injured and orphaned wild birds, with the goal of releasing them back to the wild. To do this kind of work, you do need a license from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Canadian Wildlife Services, which we do apply for year after year. And they do inspect us and have their own rules. So our birds are protected. Not everyone can do the work that we do. And that's why it's very fortunate that we have such a wonderful facility here in Ottawa. So it began in Kathy's house. But as soon as she filled her bedrooms and basements and backyards, they needed a new place. So 10 years later, they built the cabin in the woods off Moody Drive. And this is what it looked like in 1991, all fresh and new. And this is what it looked like in 2021 when we had to make the difficult decision to leave the building. Unfortunately, being in nature has a way of taking back what is hers. So all of those years of caring for birds in this building, the building was no longer appropriate for a hospital. So we are in a temporary location right now, but we have our sights set on our forever home, which we are currently fundraising for and nearly at our goal. This will be built off of Highway 7, off the Dwyer Hill exit. And it's going to be larger and more energy efficient and have the outdoor flight cages that we've always been dreaming of. We will have a large visitor education center, and we own the land. We own 17 acres of beautiful land that we'll be able to make to serve the birds and have trails and things like that for people to explore. So this is the future dream. Every single day at the center, we are always growing and improving and learning. I've been involved in the center for over half my life, and I'm still learning every day. So it's always advancing in the way we care for these birds, and we're so excited for this building very soon in the next few years. So what does it look like inside? We care for over 4,000 birds every year. We don't have a pickup or rescue service. It is people like you who are outside in nature and are observing something that needs help and doing something about it. And because of that, our most common faces are the ones that live around our neighborhoods, because they're the most likely to be found if they are injured. So the crows and the robins and the pigeons, we see a lot of them. Last year, we saw over 600 robins come into our care. But every single year, we see over 120 different species, which is the selfish reason why I also love this job, because I get to interact with all of these birds and learn about them so up close. So for anyone listening tonight who is young or has a young person in their life that is aspiring to have a career in wildlife or veterinary studies, we do take volunteers. We rely heavily on our volunteers as a charity. We do take high school co-op students. We do hire additional summer students every summer. And this is an incredible hands-on job that is incredibly unique and will teach you a lot and looks fantastic on resumes for veterinary school, or even traveling the world and working at other rehab centers. So please keep that in mind. We are always welcoming new, young, enthusiastic people. And if you are not young and listening to this presentation today and want to help and have free time, you can volunteer at any age over the age of 16. So 16 to 116, we will find some jobs for you. So you can check out our website for more information about volunteering. And we're so happy to be able to welcome our volunteers back after 2 long years of COVID restrictions. So what can we do? At the center, we're providing medical treatment, good food, and rest. So we can fix broken wings and broken legs. We're giving medication for comfort, for infections and other illnesses in their body. We can do x-rays and blood tests for more complicated illnesses and injuries, and even surgeries are possible with the help of our veterinarian. At this time of the year, a bulk of the work is babies, and raising baby birds is no easy task. It makes the days go by very quickly because you don't have a moment to breathe, basically. While they're at the center, we do keep track of every bird. I saw a comment earlier that a couple of birds came in from the Calabogie region and they have been getting updates. So we do keep track. We put a little hospital bracelet on their ankle that contains their unique case number. And we are able to keep track and tell the rescuers how the bird is doing, what's wrong with their body, if it's been released, things like that. When a bird first arrives at the center, it kind of goes through this rehabilitation process. So every bird gets a full examination of their body, identifying what's wrong with them and making a treatment plan. This can take, 1 to 2 days to do this. And then it's placed in a small enclosure by itself. So it doesn't need to worry about what's around it. It can just rest, relax, recover. And it's a way for us to really observe how much is it eating. It's easier for us to, catch them for medication and things like that. But as they start feeling better and they no longer have a cast or need medication, this is when we could put them in with other birds. Maybe they're a bird that requires swimming daily for exercise and feather condition. We're putting them in with other birds of their own kind or other birds that they would associate with in nature. So their space gets larger and larger and larger throughout their journey at our hospital, allowing them more space to exercise, regain strength and balance. To the point where we feel that they are ready to return to the wild. So there's lots of different rooms within the hospital. Each one contains, different kinds of birds. Some we do need to keep all by themselves. Owls don't make friends with too many other birds at the center, but as much as possible, we're keeping them with other birds. We don't want these birds to become friendly or any less wild than the moment that they arrived at the center. So easily over 1,500 baby birds each summer. They're put in small little makeshift nests. Now these are very old versions, but I love this video. I've kept it for a long time to show people because this is what it often looks like when we open up an incubator for feeding. It's piles and piles and piles of hungry mouths. Now a baby bird's mouth is much bigger than its parents. It almost ellipses his whole head, and they're all very brightly colored. This is nature's target. It's the message to mom and dad to please put food here. So baby birds basically eat, sleep, and poop. But the eating part is a lot of work because we're feeding our baby birds every 20 minutes throughout the day. We're so thankful that people knit all these cute little nests now. They're much easier to clean in our washing machine. And they're so much cozier. There's the baby robins in that nest. We're back to some baby grackles. Again, you can notice that their mouths are very brightly colored. Different colors for different species. It's one of the ways we're able to identify baby birds. It's by the color of their mouth and by the color of the side of their mouth, their gape, kind of like their lips. Of course, every time you feed a baby bird, they poop, so we go through lots of Kleenex and cleaning. If you're feeding them every 20 minutes, you have enough time to feed them all, clean all their little Kleenexes, get back to the kitchen, clean your tools, make new food, and then the 20 minutes is up. So as Kendall mentioned, this is our busy time of the year always. June is our busiest month out of the year. We expect nearly 1,000 birds to arrive in June. So this is the time of the year that we do launch our baby bird campaign, our baby boom campaign. And this year certainly did start off with quite the boom with that storm. So what we did see is an influx of birds, but particularly these ones. So crows nest in the top half of trees, of pine trees, and these are a lot of the trees that came down in the storm. So we received just over 30 crows within the following 48 hours of the storm. And normally we receive maybe 50 crows in an entire baby season. So to get 30 in a couple days is an incredible number. They are very sweet birds, though. We have so many crows that we have nests upon nests of them, which is wonderful. They have so much company with each other. As you may know, crows are one of the species that are very family oriented birds, so they do best as small groups. And so it's very unfortunate that all of these crows have been separated from their family, but our hope is that spending time together in our center with their new siblings, they are going to form some important bonds that when they are released together as small flocks, they will continue on throughout their life. So all of it is for the one main goal of releasing these birds back to the wild. One of our favorite releases in the past couple months was this northern hawk owl. We hadn't seen a northern hawk owl in over 5 years at the center. So this was a pretty special one. Every release is pretty special, but when you have a unique bird or an endangered bird or a bird that's, had a really incredible recovery, it really feels pretty amazing to set that bird back into the wild. So this northern hawk owl was hit by a car outside of a school and found by students. Who, with the help of their custodian, was able to get it to our care. Thankfully, no broken bones. It was just a lot of bruising and soreness to its chest, so sore that it didn't want to flap or move or eat for the first week in our care. But thankfully back in the wild now, hopefully far up north, breeding again this year. And that's what it's all about. Although I will fully admit that it is bittersweet releasing a bird. You have a lot of really happy emotions. Bird is back in the wild. It's amazing. They made this recovery. They have a second chance at life, but at the same time, as soon as they leave that release box, we start thinking of all of the dangers and challenges that our wild birds go through. So I'm sure I'll feel this one day too when my son grows up and leaves my house. But you're happy for them, but at the same time, you just want to take them back and put them in a protective bubble. That's what the kind of feeling is. So we do firmly believe that we all play a part, and it doesn't matter what age we are. The work that we do at the center really does give birds a second chance at life, these birds that are already sick or injured. But what if we all did a little bit in our own neighborhood, our own backyard, to help wild birds? Collectively, we could make a really big difference for these birds, less of them getting hurt, healthier habitats. So Indigo is the face of the Junior Avian Ambassador Program. He's the only bird that travels, and the reason why he's able to travel is because he's always been this friendly. This is a bird that was injured at a young age. We can feel where his wing was broken, where the bones no longer line up properly, and he was cared for by someone who was not licensed to do so. So he did become imprinted and he can no longer fly. So he carries that important story wherever we go. Typically, we travel all around the city to over 100 classrooms a year, educating young people about wild birds and telling his important story that we need to help our wild animals, but we can't do it ourselves. We need to bring it to the people who know how to care for them. And for wild birds, that is the Wild Bird Care Center here in Ottawa. But what we do encourage kids to do is to do something in their own backyards. So we have 10 missions for young people to try and complete, and we do reward them with a really cool Junior Avian Ambassador pin and certificate if they've done something in their own neighborhoods. And we're very proud to say that we've awarded over 2,000 kids with these pins and certificates all around Ottawa, which is pretty incredible. So Indigo will be with me on Friday, as Kendall mentioned. He is happy for people to come up close and say hi. Today we were quite busy at a school in Barrhaven that we've been at for a couple weeks. We've actually talked to every single person in that school, so it's been pretty fun. He's a busy guy. So anyone interested in learning, thank you, Kendall, you're right on it. Anyone interested in learning more about our education program, we visit groups in schools, Girl Guide groups, Boy Scouts, camps, we do birthday parties, all of these things to help the wild birds at the center. So all of the funds from our presentations goes to help the birds at the center. So it's a win-win. So talking about things that we can do, being avian ambassadors, the next couple slides focus on the main reasons that we see adult birds becoming injured. And one of them is window collisions. So birds do not see glass. They see a reflection of more sky and trees. So we need to make our windows visible for the birds. And to do so, any mitigation measures needs to go on the outside of the window. So there's a wonderful product called Feather Friendly. These are the tiny dots that is sold at Wild Birds Unlimited. It's just a strip that you can put on, and they're spaced out appropriately. We used to think, maybe one or two shadowy decals would prevent birds from hitting windows, but that's not true. We do need to cover our entire windows with something. So these dots, Feather Friendly. Acopian bird savers, these are strings, like heavy paracord that hang down every couple inches across the window. So this could be a do-it-yourself option. Decorative paintings, you can use tempera paint. In a pinch, you can use just white soap or highlighter. But again, everything needs to go on the outside of the window. And if you've had a bird continuously fly at your window or knock at your window, in particular cardinals, they're seeing the reflection. So cardinals and robins are fairly territorial backyard birds, and sometimes they may catch a glimpse of the most handsome bird they've ever seen in their life, and they don't realize it's the reflection. So if you have birds that are repeatedly flying at your window from a short distance, maybe even going around your car mirrors, that's the problem. They see the reflection and they're not convinced it's themselves. So a quick solution is just to use some post-it notes and just stick those to the area. After a couple of hours, they usually forget that bird was there, and the problem is solved. This year's World Migratory Bird Day theme focused on nighttime lights, so artificial lighting. A lot of our migratory birds are moving at nighttime. They're flying over our cities in the cover of darkness, and as they fly over, they become very distracted and disoriented by the lights that they see below. So one of the easiest things that we can do is just reduce our light usage, close our curtains when we're watching TV, and turn off our outdoor lights, put them on a timer. Anything to reduce our artificial light that's polluting the environment will help our wild birds. For bird feeder placement, the general rule is very close to your window, so less than 3 feet. And that way, if a bird is at your feeder and becomes spooked, it does not have enough speed to really hurt itself if it hits your window. Or put your bird feeder more than 10 feet away. If the bird gets spooked, it has enough time to kind of pull itself together and avoid dangers. It's not in that full panic flight right away. Oops. Now, when I first started at the center, we would say if a bird has hit your window, just leave it be if it's in a safe location. That advice has really changed over the years. We now advise that any bird that has been suspected of hitting your window, please capture it after a collision. Even if it doesn't look injured or can fly a little bit, if you can catch it, that's going to give us the chance to make sure it really is okay. A dark, quiet place like a dark box or cat carrier for that bird to rest after a collision is really the best thing that you can provide it. Often they have internal bleeding, they're breathing very heavy, so just giving them that space to rest. Collisions can be reported. Oh, I didn't update this, sorry. I was giving a presentation for Wild Birds Unlimited outside of Ottawa, but here in Ottawa, we have an awesome organization called Safe Wings. So they, just like FLAP, Fatal Light Awareness Program, are tracking all of the window collisions. The more we know about a problem, the more change that we can make. So Safe Wings Ottawa would like to know when birds hit your windows or your work windows so they can keep it in their database. They are also a wonderful resource for solutions or any questions, and they too will provide temporary care for birds until they can get them to our center after a window collision. This is my cat, Phoebe. Yes, I named her after her bird. I know I'm not going to convince every person to keep their cat inside or on a leash or in a catio, but at this time of the year, any minute that you can keep your cat inside or on a leash, maybe if it's just one extra day out of the week that you can keep your cat inside, that's going to make a difference to the birds, especially this time of year when there's so many baby birds learning how to fly. So the biggest thing that we see with cat attack birds is not broken wings or broken legs, it's actually infection. And the reason why is because a bird's skin is as thin as tissue paper. It's transparent. So even the most gentle cat playing with a bird, this is what they do. That's cats being cats. They bat them around, they pick them up in their mouth. It often makes a scratch or hole in their skin. And that's where the germs get in from their saliva. So we really want people to hear this message that if a bird has been in a cat's mouth, if a cat brings you home a present, do not assume that bird is okay. Even if you don't see injuries, birds do not often bleed if they have a puncture or laceration. This bird does need care. What we find is that the birds that come in have a lot of infection in their body. They're struggling to survive because of a cat attack. And at that point, it's really hard to reverse the infection. So the sooner we can get them in, maybe they're okay and we get released a couple days later. Best case scenario, wonderful. Otherwise, we're going to prevent that infection after a cat attack. Ooh, these say cat collars. I'll have to check those out. So that is kind of the end of the stuff about the bird center and generally helping birds in your yard. The second half of this presentation is all about baby birds. And the way I've organized it is a little bit of a who am I guessing game, and then followed by a little bit of information. So if you're ready, we're going to start with these birds, which I think are the two most problematic species when it comes to people interacting with birds. So these two species, so there are two different species on this page, they have likely moved into your house without permission. They've probably got in through a vent or a hole in your soffit. Maybe they're even in your mailbox. And yes, their babies can be loud. And yes, they are messy. All right, so who are they? They are the European starling and house sparrow. So these birds are cavity nesters. They have been introduced to North America many, many years ago, over 100 years ago, and they love it here. There's lots of them. And they really have succeeded because they've learned they can make nests in our structure. So they only need a 1.5 inch to 2 inch hole to get in. Starlings are really smart. They can open flaps, no problem. So if you just have those The dryer vents that close with the flaps, that is not going to deter a starling. They can open that flap and go right in. They make nests that are way bigger than they need. And unfortunately, because of that and because of where they nest, we understand that they can become a potential fire or health hazard if they're in, like, say, your dryer vent or near your furnace or in a vent. So prevention is key. Taking a walk around your house in the spring. If you haven't done so, do so now because we're well into nesting season, just to look for any holes um, or things that have started to fall apart around your chimneys, your dryer vents. Hardware stores sell a full cage that goes over your dryer vents. That will definitely keep them out. They're only maybe $10. It's a easy preventative measure before the problem starts. They can be renested. So whenever we're talking to someone that has a problem with a bird's nest, the first thing we do is remind them that birds grow up really fast. From the time a starling hatches to the time it leaves the nest is only 2 weeks. If they've made a whole nest in your vent and you didn't realize until you hear babies, there's probably only 1 more week to go until they're gone. If you really cannot wait that time until they leave the nest, it is possible to take the whole nesting material out, the babies out, and put them in a nest outside of the entrance where they were getting in. So you can use, say, a birdhouse from Wild Birds Unlimited to do so, or you can make your own makeshift birdhouse, even out of something simple like a vinegar bottle. So if that's a problem, we're happy to walk people through the solution and renesting procedures for that. All right, who are these ones? Again, this is 2 species to the same page. They each only lay 2 eggs per nest. And thanks to a large crop, that's a storage capacity organ in their neck, the babies only need to be fed a few times a day, which is a relief when I've told you that we usually feed our babies every 20 minutes. One of them, the one on the left, nests in a tree, and the other one, the one on the right, loves cluttered balconies. So these are, here's some baby pictures. We call them squeakers. These are mourning dove on the left and pigeon on the right. They have a little bit of a longer incubation time than, say, a robin or a starling, especially the pigeons. So their incubation time is a bit longer, and then their nesting time is a bit longer. The babies are going to be in the nest close to a month. So if you are in an apartment and you have a pigeon nesting on your balcony, we understand they can be messy. Again, you're looking at maybe a month until they're gone. And one solution to help you out is to put the whole entire nest in an open box. That way, when they leave, you could just throw out the whole box, and that will be less scrubbing and stuff around your balcony. Mourning doves, once they leave the nest, they spend quite a long time with their parents in and around your yard, even though they're quite small. And again, because of that crop, they only have to be fed by mom and dad a couple times a day. So we get a lot of concerned people saying, these babies are abandoned. Mom and dad, I haven't seen them for hours. That's completely normal. If you're really concerned, you can feel for that crop. It's right at the front of their neck. If they've been fed, it feels like a little hacky sack, like a pouch full of seeds. It's quite easy to feel. Could be one way to really determine if they are abandoned or not before collecting them. Okay, who is this one? You hear me singing almost every day. They are bright and beautiful. That could be their middle name. And the nest will be well hidden in a dense area of your yard. Could be a hedge or overgrown vines, a little shrub. This is a favorite bird of someone earlier on in the chat. This is a baby cardinal, not red at all. They're quite brown, even more brown than the females, and they don't have that red beak when they are young. So cardinals, they form really strong bonds. So they'll stay together throughout the winter, which gives them an advantage come the spring. They're already paired up. They've been here all winter. You've been feeding them awesome food at your feeders, so their bodies are ready to go. And because of that, they're one of the first, and they happen to be one of the last baby birds we see each season because they will have more than one nest. So we always have bets every year, the staff and the volunteers, which bird will be the first one to come in. Cardinals lost this year to house finches, believe it or not. But we will see cardinals babies as early as late April, and we will see the last ones coming in September. So they will keep nesting 2 or 3 times, depending on the summer. And it's partly because of their strong bond. Their partnership is amazing. Mom sings from the nest all the instructions to the male, and he's busy all through the yard, not only singing and defending the territory, but bringing food all the time. When the babies leave the nest, dad takes over, and then mom kind of regroups and will start her nest before the first babies are even fully independent, which is pretty crazy. Charming birds. All right, who is this one? This one you definitely see very often on your lawn. This one might be nesting on your outdoor light, wreath, or downspout of your eaves. And they will use their nest more than once in a summer, like the cardinal, and will likely return next year. Nice. This is indeed a robin. So their nest is made with thick, long grasses and lots of mud. They're pretty characteristic. And a lot of people call us concerned and said, oh, I went away for holidays and now there's a nest above my door. Or I came home from work and now there's a nest above my light and I take my dog out every day out the front door. You don't need to be too concerned. These robins have been watching you. They know your habits. They know you have a dog, and they've decided that's much less of a risk to them than to nest in a tree where there might be raccoons or squirrels. In many ways, that your house is actually a pretty safe location. So just go about your own business. If you're able to, avoid them as much as possible, that's great. Maybe take your dog out the side door or something like that. They will appreciate it. And again, it's only a couple weeks from the time that they hatch to the time they leave the nest is only 2 weeks, which is just incredible. And baby robins do not have the solid color of the adults. They are speckled, and they can range from almost a white belly with speckles to orange with speckles. They're really polite babies. All these birds have their own personalities, and robins are polite. They wait their turn patiently. If they eat too much, they'll often just spit it out to the side. They are certainly one of the favorite baby birds at the center every year. They're very sweet. All right, here's another double on one page. So both of these species, they love to nest in tall evergreens. Yes, both of them are quite loud, and sometimes they can be considered a bully. And do you have a pool? So the one on the left was common grackle, and the one on the right was the American crow. So both of these start nesting pretty early in the spring. Young crows have baby blue eyes. So when a baby bird leaves the nest, they're almost full adult size. So it can be really tricky, especially with crows, we find, for people to identify a baby versus an adult, because the babies are all black like their adults, crows. So if you do find a baby crow that you're concerned about, check the eyes. The eyes will tell you if it is a young one that has been born this year. Their eyes are not going to turn that jet black until the fall. And I asked about a pool because grackles happen to be the one species of bird that is has a fondness for dropping their baby's fecal sacs in water. So when we think about a nest in nature, there's not poop on it. Birds will carry their baby's poop away from the nest or eat it in the early days, and grackles just happen to like to drop it in water, especially pools. Thankfully, these birds only nest once per season, so once they're done, and they nest early, so hopefully they're done before you are swimming too much. I don't have too much advice as to how to avoid that. I think, if anything, I would try to put something that reflects the light floating in your pool. So whether putting even maybe some makeshift tinfoil eyeballs on a pool floaty, something that would catch the light as the starlings fly over your pool might make them a little bit nervous and deter them a little bit. All right, who are these cuties? They're a familiar face, but their nest might be hard to find. But you can help the species by putting up a nesting box. If you listen closely, you might be able to identify them by sound as well. These are adorable baby chickadees, which look like the adults when they're born. They will have the chubby mouth, and they do nest inside a tree cavity. It may be quite close to the ground. It doesn't have to be very high, but the hole size is very important. So if you are considering putting up a nesting box, I would certainly head over to Wild Birds Unlimited to check out their supply. And if you're building it yourself, the hole that you make is really important, because anything bigger than 1.25 inch, those house sparrows can get in and ruin the chickadee nest. They are much larger than a chickadee and much stronger, and they can harm them. And if you have made something that the hole size doesn't quite match or has been damaged by squirrels, Wild Birds Unlimited sells these metal plates that you could put over top to bring that hole size back to the appropriate size and also protect it from further damage. All right, so your garden is a lovely place for this species to nest, and they nest on the ground. They lay about 8 to 12 eggs, which they can't do all on the same day. So they'll lay one each day until the nest is complete, and then mom will incubate, and they're all going to hatch all on the same day. And when they hatch, they're going to want to walk out of your yard, and they might need your help if you have a fully fenced yard, or if they end up in your pool, you might have to offer the little babies a ramp to get out. And these are the mallards. So they do nest away from water. So thinking back to the robin that's nesting on someone's wreath on their front door, nesting close to a body of water would be very dangerous. There's a lot of predators. So nesting in someone's backyard, maybe there's a dog and people, but there's no foxes that are frequenting that area. So less predators, safer area, these birds think, and they can nest in the craziest places. I've seen them on roofs. There's one that nests in a planter box on Albert Street every year, in schoolyards where they actually have to usher these babies through the school to get to the front. They're a little bit crazy, but they do walk away from their nest on the first day, and they do not return. So just helping them out of the yard is all you need to do. And then mom has got it set in her mind she's heading somewhere. And I know she has to cross busy roads and lots of dangerous areas, but the more we try to direct her of where we think she should go, the better chance that she's going to get stressed and the babies are going to scatter. So really a hands-off approach, just directing her out of any enclosed area and then leaving her be. They really know what they're doing, even if it does seem crazy to us. This year, because of the avian influenza, unfortunately, the center is unable to take in any water birds, any aquatic birds. So it's really important this year, compared to all the other years, to try and keep these families together, because we can't take in the orphan ducklings and goslings. So some species can be introduced to other families, like geese will adopt others from other families. So if you do find one, please contact the center, and we'll see and work with you to do what we can to help these baby birds find some family out there that will take care of them. And the very last birds that we're going to see, of course, I haven't named all the species, but this is a common one in backyards as well, and it will be the last species to nest each summer. They are strict vegetarians, and they do stay here all winter long, and they absolutely love lazy gardeners. So you never, ever, ever have to feel bad after this presentation for not cutting back your garden and leaving all those dead stalks up because these birds depend on them. And we call them beep boops when they start arriving at the center. You got it. These are goldfinches, and they wait until about mid-July would be the earliest we're going to start seeing babies. They wait until the flowers have gone to seed. And because they stay all winter, we will see babies coming into the center as late as the end of September. And the key to their winter survival, aside from your awesome feeders filled with good seed, are those dead flower stalks that are still sticking out of the snow in February. So when we think about all these baby birds that I've showed you tonight, it's interesting to think that there are two very distinct forms of development with birds. We have altricial birds that are born with their eyes closed, they stay in the nest, their parents have to feed them for a couple weeks before they're somewhat independent to leave the nest. And then we have precocial birds. These birds hatch, and within a couple of hours, their eyes are open, they can walk, and they can feed themselves. So precocial birds are like the mallards, the goslings, but other things like killdeers and wild turkeys. Neither of these birds is going to be able to fly for a little bit, and both need their parents, but it's a very different form of care. So the message that we try to put out at this time of the year is to please, try to understand these birds, learn about them, and think to yourself, is this a baby bird learning how to fly? Can I do something for this baby bird to reunite it with its family before I rescue it? We do a fantastic job at the center, but nothing will be the same as their own mom and dad. So the biggest myth out there is that if you touch a baby bird, mom's going to abandon it. That is completely false. Birds do not have a good sense of smell at all. They will never smell a human on their baby. So we can repair a nest that's tipped over a bit. We can make a makeshift nest and put a baby nearby. That could be an appropriate thing to do. Or for the baby birds that have left the nest, sometimes it's just best to leave them be. So on the left side, we have what we call fledglings. They've left the nest. There's no room in a nest to practice flying. So they have all their feathers. They have a short, stubby tail. There's no room in a nest to grow a tail. They're sharing this small space with 4 other siblings usually. So short, stubby tail, covered in feathers, their eyes are open and bright, and they're able to stand on their feet and perch on a branch. These birds are okay to be left with mom and dad out in the wild. Even if we don't see mom and dad all of the time, they're going to be coming and going in little bursts. But if we find something like this in the middle of the road, we can gently bring it to a nearby bush for mom and dad to find. The birds that really need our help are the ones that we can still see their skin, their eyes are closed, they can't stand up, they're falling over, they're bleeding. These types of birds, we do need to help them, whether that's putting them back in the nest or bringing them to our center. We're open 8 to 4 every single day. We're answering the phone 8 to 4 every day. So if you're ever unsure, please reach out so we can work with you. So rescuing an injured bird, Indigo needed his nails trimmed the other day, so I used him as an example. So what we recommend, please wear gloves, especially with the avian influenza this year. A mask is not a bad idea as well. And a towel or a blanket, sweater, anything to cover the bird is your biggest tool. So I approach Indigo on the floor here with my gloves and my towel, And what the goal is to try to toss that towel over top of the bird. Once the bird is covered, they can't really escape very well, and it allows us to make sure we're picking up the entire bird all at once. We're not just grabbing a wing or a leg. Covering up the bird automatically calms them, and it does give us a little bit of protection from beaks and feet, but it is also for the bird as well to calm them when they're covered up. If you are transporting a bird, I cannot stress this enough, please use a secure box. Think about the bird that you're bringing to the center. This snowy owl was moments away from getting out of the hole it had chewed, and that's the last thing you need while you are driving, is to have a loose bird in your car. A towel at the bottom of the box is great for comfort as well as grip. And if the bird can't stand up, we roll a towel into a donut shape just to give something around their body to lean against. And please do not give food or water by mouth. We know that we're caring people and all we want to do is help the bird all at once. It needs food, it needs water, it's going to starve. That's really not true. And giving food when the bird's body is not ready for it, and I'll be honest, it's a struggle for us at the center as well, because we're designed to want to help them, but we have to resist the urge. If their body's not ready for it, we can put them into a state of shock. If they're not able to swallow properly, they may aspirate the water that we've given them and do a lot more harm than good. So the life-saving action we need people to do is just to keep them in a dark, quiet location in a box until they can get it to our center. If you can't get it to us within 24 hours, please call and we will give you temporary care instructions until you can get it to us. And that is about it from me. I thank you very much for your time and support. Please keep in touch with the center. We are posting all the time on Instagram and Facebook, especially all the different birds and events and things coming up. And if you're happy to stay a little bit longer, I am ready to be drilled with questions.
If you have questions, folks, you can raise your hands. Well, you would hit the reaction button there, and you can raise your hand that way, and we'll call you out. You can type your question in the chat, or you can unmute and ask a question one at a time. I see someone had their hand up. Who is that? Wing? Where'd it go? Oh, it went away. Well, I'm going to ask a question, Patty, on behalf of many customers who have come into the store asking this question. Of course, we've all just endured this crazy storm, and I know when it, hit the store, we all ran into the back away from the glass, and my family all ran to the basement. But what did all the birds do? Yeah. When so many trees crashed, what did the birds do?
I know, isn't it amazing to think, what are they doing out there? We're in like panic mode and we're such large creatures. Can you imagine like a tiny little hummingbird hanging onto a branch for dear life? I have seen some videos. I saw a goose in particular that was in a parking lot that was trying to walk, but the wind was so strong, like it literally just sat down before being blown away. So birds can sense the weather. There are certain behaviors, and I think as backyard bird feeder people, you notice that the birds come and go in response to the weather and in encroaching storms. So I would hope the birds had a feel if something was coming, and yeah, they go to something to shelter themselves. So close to the tree trunk and in a bush. So the birds that we saw coming in, again, they were a lot of the crows of these tall trees. We didn't see a lot of robins or cardinals because they're in these dense bushes. So that did at least offer them protection through the storm. But gosh, it must have been so scary for them.
Yes. Catherine Mills has a question.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for a lovely demonstration. Talk tonight too. I was wondering, for example, when it came to the crows, I've watched family of crows, and they have these intergenerational and not just a nuclear family, that they learn from one another and support one another. So I just wondered if there have been any studies to see how it works when they've been orphaned, and even if they do get a chance to bond with others of their same age, you know, what happens when there's been that break in the information that's able to be passed from one another.
That's such a great question, Catherine, and something we wonder all the time, like what happens to these birds after we release them? We only temporarily ban them. We don't ban them with those metal bands. So we don't know what happens after they leave our release box. The best that we can do is provide them as much as we can while they're in our care. So the crows you saw are with other crows of the same age. The one cawing in the background is an adult crow. So if we have adult robins, we'll try to keep them in with the baby robins. They may not care for the baby robins, but at least that presence and that sound and their calls is giving them something. So we do what we can. We work with other rehab centers as well. So if we were to only get, and this has already happened this year, we got one single raven. We don't usually get a lot of ravens. So we'll work with other rehab centers to see what they have in their care. So we transferred this raven to another rehabber who has other ravens, so at least you know they have a buddy to be released with. But we never really know, which is part of the problem when you release a bird. It's like, oh, I don't know. But yeah, it's pretty cool observing them in the center and all their behaviors, and a lot of it, yeah, is really really natural. It comes to them naturally.
Thanks.
I see Megan has her hand up with the question.
Yes, I'd like to know about feeding dried mealworms. I was given dried mealworms by my sister, so I started hydrating them and putting them out. And my bluebirds are taking them, and I have 5 bluebirds, baby bluebirds in the box. I just, different websites say different things on don't give too many, how many to give. Can the baby bluebirds digest them? It's confusing.
It is confusing, absolutely. And you know what? It's even confusing for us. We used to feed a lot of mealworms, and we have switched over to crickets. So we go through 30,000 crickets a week. We used to feed heavily with mealworms, but they are missing some important nutrients. And especially when you dry them, that you know, if you're eating a dried food, it's going to use moisture from your body to rehydrate that as you digest it. So I really like hearing that you're you know, putting them in water to hydrate the mealworms before you're putting them out for the birds. That is very helpful, and for the babies as well. And I would say it's fine for a backyard bird feeder, because these birds are also eating other things. They're not just offering the babies strict mealworms. We need to trust that these birds certainly know more than us. So they are appreciative of your easy snack, but they're definitely giving a whole rounded diet to their babies. We couldn't strictly.
How many should I, sorry, how many should I put out approximately then for one pair of bluebirds and their babies?
I would put out as many that would disappear, you know, in a few hours or something like that. It is more of a treat for them. You don't want them to really spoil out there in the heat. You know, these mealworms will go bad if you've rehydrated them and they are in the heat. So I would put out enough for your enjoyment to see your backyard friends, and then they'll move on to a natural diet for sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
There was a question in the comments here that came from Jenny. Certainly in a, you know, it can be upsetting. Many of us may have witnessed this, where it was a robin, babies had left the nest. However, as they followed their parents, we saw a crow come and take one of them, take one at a time. It was heartbreaking to watch. Is there anything we can do to deter crows from doing this?
No, and it is heartbreaking. I've seen it too in my own yard. And unfortunately, nature is nature, and it's so cruel to have to witness it sometimes. But once they've, you know, identified this family, and if they're determined to come after it, you know, you could put all this effort into running around and chasing them away. This was me with a squirrel the other day by my cardinals in my hedge. I was chasing it with a stick, but I know, you know, as soon as I come back in my house, I can't be out there 24 hours. It may come back, it may not, I don't know. But unfortunately, for a natural instinct, this is what crows do. This is part of their diet, unfortunately. There's not much that we can do to deter them.
It's upsetting to see, but they have to eat.
I know.
And they have babies to feed as well.
Ooh.
Yeah. Question from Kate. How do baby birds learn their songs? Is it by instinct or from parents?
It is both, depending on the species. And what's interesting, I think, in our facility over time, that you will hear birds that have learned some things from other birds, especially the ones that are capable of imitating. So something like a starling, if it's been with us for a long time, or even a blue jay, their vocal abilities can imitate other sounds. So we have heard them do other bird calls that they've been hearing. We've had blue jays make calls that they've heard in the center, like a telephone or something like that. But for the most species, it is just designed in them. So they don't really need to learn from their parents. And for some species, something like the song sparrow, which is a beautiful bird that we often hear in our neighborhoods, they're learning from a community. And studies show that it's not necessarily their parents that taught them the songs, it's actually the others around in their community. So there is different dialects, accents, you could say, even. Song sparrows here would sound slightly different than song sparrows in Toronto, per se. There's not really a harm, I guess, if I think of the baby birds that we're caring for. They shouldn't be at a disadvantage going back into the wild. They have a certain call, and they'll practice it throughout their life and continue learning with what they hear around them. I like that question.
Question from Brad is, where is the best place to mount a birdhouse?
Awesome. So that really depends on what kind of birdhouse. So I saw that question coming. So
I think we're both going to the same website right now.
I'm racing you. So nestwatch.org has got amazing information about nest boxes. And so the link I've given you is called Right Bird, Right House. So you select your region, you select your habitat, and it's going to give you different nesting boxes that would be appropriate for your area. Once you click on a nesting box, you can get the information about how to build it, and then it'll say where the best place is to put it. So this is like the height, what kind of tree, the direction it should be facing, all of those kinds of things. This is also a great site to submit your nesting data. So these people are collecting all sorts of data from nests, from citizen science scientists like you. And collectively, if we keep, piling in all this information, we can learn a lot about birds and their nesting habits, so we can improve. I just saw that they changed their nesting box for the screech owl this year. So we're always learning.
All right. Any final questions?
I'm not stumped yet.
It's a hard one.
I have one.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Hi. So I have lots of grackles in my backyard. But I've noticed yesterday and today that there is definitely a juvenile, because they're more black and they don't have the blue head yet, but it's still being fed. Mm-hmm. How long does that go on for?
Do they have 40-year-old children that won't leave their house? I wonder that sometimes in the bird world. So generally speaking, it's usually about a week or so after a baby bird leaves the nest. That can be longer with some birds. I would say 2 weeks after leaving the nest, they should be fully independent. Grackles are a bird that's going to start flocking right away. Same with starlings. So they start gathering together. But they shouldn't be fed for too much longer. But you get some babies.
Okay.
Babyish than others.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. Catherine. She asked if we work with Cornell or any other university to exchange knowledge and data. I can't say we get a lot of requests for our data. We have a lot of data, but it's difficult for scientists to use because there's a lot of biases in it. Because these are injured birds, these are birds that people found. It leads to a lot of biases. So we don't get asked a lot. Now we do work with the universities and colleges here, certainly with co-op placements. So we get a lot of co-op students in the vet tech program for Algonquin. We had a teacher student do her placement with us for the education program. But we don't often submit our data to something like Cornell. Now we share information with other rehabilitation centers, absolutely. There's not really there are textbooks, but it's a constant learning in this field of work. There's not really a university program to be a rehabber. These rehab centers have all started just like ours, from one caring person in their basement, and have just learned over time. So the knowledge base has to get passed down. It's really important that long-term staff like myself, pass on this knowledge to the new people, and we share new diets we've come up with, or new ways to care for birds of certain species that worked for us with other rehab centers across the country. So we do work that way with other organizations. Avian flu. So unfortunately, our biggest impact is how we had to change our protocols, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. After 40 plus years of never turning a bird away, we had to make the very difficult decision not to accept aquatic birds this year. And we're very careful. We have a lot of protocols now when birds arrive at the center. We do a lot of screening because the biggest risk to us is allowing a bird into the center that does have avian flu, avian influenza, because the consequences of that are pretty intense if something gets in our building. So in that way, that's kind of the biggest impact we've seen. It's kind of hard to say what's really going on in nature right now. So waterfowl, the aquatic birds like ducks, are the natural source for avian influenza, and they may not always show symptoms, which is why we had to say we can't take those ones at all. And we've had some suspected cases of birds that feed on other birds. So we're careful with raptors and ravens right now coming into our care. So we screen them. Some we unfortunately need to euthanize if we do suspect them, and send them for testing. So it's kind of an icky year for us. It's a icky year for any bird lover. We really hope it passes quickly, and we don't need to deal with this for much longer. Oh, we had 5 eggs in the chickadee nest, and now there's only 3. Oh, what happened to the other 2?
Yeah, this is my chickadee nest right here.
Oh, yay!
Yeah, we have a camera in there. We've been watching the whole thing from building the nest to hatching. It's been most fascinating.
Thank you so
But
much.
we did find one dead, very early baby egg, dead one. But the 5th egg is just a mystery, so we're not sure what happened to it. So
its egg disappeared completely?
Just disappeared, yeah. It disappeared. And we don't know what happened to it.
So if the parents know it was not viable, it is a potential they may have cracked it so they could have removed it from the nest.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I mean, I could have watched every preview, every recording, but it records practically all the time, so I just didn't think I could find it. But it's been
Kindle because we've been watching the barred owl nest on the Cornell website, and
yes,
it had an egg that didn't hatch, and finally one of the babies accidentally broke it, made a mess of the place, and as soon as mom returned back to the nest, she I mean, I think she looked unimpressed, but she took that egg and took it out of the nest and made it disappear. I'm sure it smelled. So if there was an egg there, it may have been broken by one of the birds or one of the babies.
Yeah.
That becomes a risk. So
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I can watch all the events, and I think they're going to fledge very soon because they're flying up inside the box now. So it's pretty neat.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a great presentation.
Thank you for saying
Fan. I love the sound of baby chickadees, and I have my own mnemonic for them. And I like to think that baby chickadees, this is what they say: I'm a baby, I'm a baby, I'm a baby. So pretty soon we'll get to hear that in our yards and at our feeders.
I like that one. I'm gonna add it to my cheeseburger and
Yeah.
Peep loops for the goldfinches.
Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us this evening, and especially Patty and Indigo, the cutest sidekick I've ever seen. We'll get up close there for an Indigo spotlight. If you want to come and see Indigo in person along with Patty, they're going to be at the store Friday afternoon between 1 and 4. As I mentioned, we're hoping to raise $1,000 to support the baby bird campaign with the Wild Bird Care Center. So please consider making a donation and send us an email or reach out to Facebook once you've made a donation, so I can be sure to send you a coupon so you can treat yourself to something at the store as well. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks again, Patty and Indigo, and we'll see you guys on Friday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.